There's a stack of records somewhere in your memory. Albums you played until the grooves wore thin, songs that came through car speakers on a hot summer night, melodies that somehow never made it onto the greatest hits collections. The 1970s produced more rock music than any radio station could handle, and that meant a lot of extraordinary songs got left behind. Today, we're pulling them back out. These are 25 Lost 70s rock classics, the ultimate vinyl era playlist. Number 25, Rock Candy by Montrose. In October 1973, a band out of San Francisco dropped a debut album on Warner Brothers that barely cracked the Billboard 200, peaking at number 133. The label reportedly didn't know what to do with them. They already had the Doobie Brothers, they already had Deep Purple, and Montrose didn't fit neatly into either lane. What the band did have was a then-unknown vocalist named Sammy Hagar, guitarist Ronnie Montrose, who'd been doing session work with Van Morrison and the Edgar Winter Group, and a debut record that Kerrang! Magazine would later rank as the 4th best metal album of all time. Rock Candy was one of its standout tracks. The drum intro came out of Denny Carmassi experimenting with alternatives to John Bonham's intro on Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks. The song itself came together as a spontaneous studio jam, with Hagar improvising lyrics on the spot after producer Ted Templeman asked if the band had anything else. Van Halen used the Montrose debut as a blueprint for their own first album and hired the same producer, Ted Templeman, and the same engineer, Don Landy. The Montrose album eventually went platinum, but it took 13 years. Number 24, Station Man by Fleetwood Mac.
Midnight Train.
Most people know the 1977 version of Fleetwood Mac, the one with Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham, and Rumors. Far fewer know the version that was rebuilding from scratch in 1970 after founder Peter Green had walked away. Kiln House, released September 18, 1970, was the band's first album without Green, and it peaked at number 69 on the US Billboard 200. But inside, it was Station Man, co-written by Danny Kirwan, Jeremy Spencer, and bassist John McVie. NME's reviewer called it possibly the album's premiere track. The band performed it live well into 1976, and according to Mick Fleetwood's memoir, it was one of the first songs ever played with Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks at a show in El Paso, Texas on May 15, 1975. A version with Buckingham singing lead was eventually released on the 2018 Deluxe edition of the 1975 Fleetwood Mac album. Number 23, No Matter What by Badfinger.
Doesn't matter what you do, girl.
Badfinger had a direct line to the Beatles. Signed to Apple Records, their first hit, Come and Get It, was written and produced by Paul McCartney. But No Matter What, released in November 1970 and written by Pete Ham, was entirely their own. It peaked at number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 5 in the UK. VH1 later ranked it number 1 on their list of essential power pop tracks. Produced by Mal Evans, the Beatles' road manager, the song was recorded at Abbey Road Studios in May 1970. It was initially rejected by Apple as a single. Their album track, Without You, written by Ham and Tommy Evans, became a number 1 hit for Harry Nilsson in 1972 and reached number 1 in the UK for Mariah Carey in 1994, while royalties for Badfinger stayed tied up in legal battles for years. Pete Ham died in 1975 at age 27. Tommy Evans died in 1983 at age 36. Number 22, Hold Your Head Up by Argent. Rod Argent had already been part of one great band. As a founding member of the Zombies, he co-wrote Time of the Season, which reached number 3 on Billboard in 1969, after the band had already broken up. Argent, the band he formed in 1969, was a progressive rock outfit that struggled to convert their album work into chart success. Hold Your Head Up, from their 1972 album All Together Now, was the exception, reaching number 5 in both the US and UK and selling over 1 million copies. The song wasn't meant to be a single. Epic Records made that call. After the band performed it on Top of the Pops, their audience widened considerably. Guitarist Russ Ballard, who sang lead, noted at the time that audiences were surprised to find the rest of the band's catalog sounded nothing like it. It remains Argent's only song to chart on the Billboard Hot 100. Number 21, Easy Livin' by Uriah Heep.
This is a place I've never seen before, and I've been.
Uriah Heep released Easy Livin' in 1972, and it became their biggest US hit, peaking at number 39 on the Billboard Hot 100. For a British hard rock band that critics had written off almost entirely, one Rolling Stone reviewer famously suggested they'd have no career. It was a genuine breakthrough. The song came from the album Demons and Wizards, released in May 1972. It runs under 3 minutes, which was unusual for a band known for sprawling, keyboard-heavy epics. Ken Hensley, the band's keyboardist and primary songwriter, reportedly wrote it quickly, one of the fastest compositions on the record. Uriah Heep remains consistently underrated relative to their British hard rock contemporaries. Number 20, Free Ride by the Edgar Winter Group. Edgar Winter was a multi-instrumentalist from Beaumont, Texas, and They Only Come Out at Night, released in November 1972, contained 2 tracks that got radio attention. Frankenstein, the instrumental that reached number 1 in 1973, and Free Ride, written and sung by Dan Hartman, which peaked at number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100. The band that recorded it included Ronnie Montrose on guitar, the same guitarist who would form Montrose later that year. Free Ride is one of those songs most people recognize immediately, but couldn't name the artist or the album. That's the specific kind of lost classic this list was made for. Number 19, Driver's Seat by Sniff and the Tears. Driver's Seat was a 1978 single by a British band built around guitarist and songwriter Paul Roberts. It reached number 15 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and got substantial radio play. But the band never followed it with another charting record, and the song drifted into that specific zone of recognition where people know the music without knowing who made it. It appeared in the 1997 film Boogie Nights and in various TV soundtracks over the following decades, which is how many listeners came to know it without knowing its origin. The guitar riff sits in the ear immediately, and the production holds up without effort. Number 18, You Wear It Well by Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart's Maggie May spent 5 weeks at number 1 in 1971. The follow-up, You Wear It Well, released in 1972, reached number 1 in the UK and number 13 in the US, and tends to get swallowed by the shadow of its predecessor. Stewart co-wrote it with Martin Quittenton, the same guitarist who helped write Maggie May. The 2 songs share the same folk rock warmth, acoustic guitar up front, a slightly rambling melody, a lyric that reads like a letter. The album it came from, Never a Dull Moment, reached number 1 on the UK charts. Stewart was at the height of his confidence during this period, and You Wear It Well belongs in the same conversation as anything else he made in those years. Number 17, Holdin' On to Yesterday by Ambrosia. Ambrosia was a Los Angeles band that blended progressive rock with accessible pop, and Holdin' On to Yesterday from their 1975 debut was their first charting single, reaching number 17 on the Billboard Hot 100. The album was mixed by Alan Parsons, who had engineered Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon the previous year. The band came from the South Bay area of LA, and the song's construction is careful and unhurried in a way that requires something from the listener. Ambrosia would go on to have bigger hits in the late 70s, including How Much I Feel in 1978, but the early progressive material tends to be what holds up with the most interest over time. Number 16, This Ain't the Summer of Love by Blue Oyster Cult. Blue Oyster Cult never had the mainstream success their talent warranted. This Ain't the Summer of Love opens their 1976 album, Agents of Fortune, the same album that produced Don't Fear the Reaper, with something harder and more immediate than the hit that followed it. The band had spent the early part of the decade building a reputation as one of the more technically accomplished hard rock acts working. Eric Bloom's vocal carries that weight. The song is a reminder that the strongest material on a given album is often not the one anyone remembers. Number 15, Long Red by Mountain. Mountain was a New York power trio centered on guitarist Leslie West and bassist Felix Pappalardi, who had produced Cream's Disraeli Gears and Wheels of Fire before forming the band. Long Red originally appeared on Mountain's 1969 debut, but found a different life on the 1972 live album, Mountain Live, The Road Goes Ever On. The live version is the one that lasted. The album stalled at number 190 on the Billboard 200, but Long Red eventually found a completely different audience. Its drum breaks have been sampled by over 100 hip-hop artists, including Eric B. and Rakim, A Tribe Called Quest, and Kanye West. It became a rare example of a hard rock record that beat makers returned to with the same frequency as classic soul or R&B. Number 14, Keep On Smilin' by Wet Willie.
And she says that you're to blame, yeah.
Wet Willie came out of Mobile, Alabama, and Keep On Smilin', their 1974 single, reached number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. They were part of the Capricorn Records world, the Macon, Georgia label that was home to the Allman Brothers and much of the era's Southern rock talent, and they shared stages with those acts regularly through the early part of the decade. The song is built around Jimmy Hall's vocal performance, gospel-tinged and urgent against a brass arrangement. The band's name rarely comes up in conversations about the decade's great rock acts, but the music suggests it should.
Yeah, gotta keep on smiling, just keep on smiling.
Number 13, I'm on Fire by the Dwight Twilley Band. The Dwight Twilley Band was a Tulsa, Oklahoma duo, Dwight Twilley and Phil Seymour, making melodic rock before power pop had a widely agreed upon name. I'm on Fire, released in 1975 on Shelter Records, reached number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100. Tom Petty, a friend of Twilley's at the time, has spoken about the influence Twilley's work had on him during this period. Shelter Records was co-founded by Leon Russell, who was also an early champion of Petty's. The Dwight Twilley Band and the early Heartbreakers were working in the same world, direct, hook-driven rock with no wasted space. Number 12, Tin Man by America. America is most remembered for Rosie, A Horse with No Name, and Sister Golden Hair, but Tin Man, from their 1974 album Holiday, reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and topped the adult contemporary chart. The 3 founding members, Jerry Beckley, Dewey Bunnell, and Dan Peake, were children of American servicemen stationed in the UK and formed the band in London. Tin Man was written by Bunnell and produced by George Martin. Martin worked with America on several albums during the mid-1970s, bringing a richer orchestral dimension to their sound. The song doesn't try to be more complicated than it is. It's well-made melodic rock that sat comfortably in 1974 and has aged without difficulty. Number 11, Silver, Blue, and Gold by Bad Company. Bad Company's debut in 1974 contained Can't Get Enough and Bad Company. The second album, Straight Shooter in 1975, contained Silver, Blue, and Gold, a ballad built around an acoustic guitar figure and Paul Rodgers' voice. It didn't get much radio time, and it tends to be passed over in retrospectives. But Rodgers has cited it as one of his favorite recordings from the band's catalog. There's something genuinely unhurried about it, a quality that requires patience from the listener, which wasn't always what radio demanded. Among people who know Bad Company's deep cuts, it's consistently one of the first songs mentioned.
Now that it's gone, whoa.
Number 10, Rosie by Jackson Browne.
She was standing at the loading.
Jackson Browne's Running on Empty, released in 1977, was recorded entirely live, on stage, backstage, and on the tour bus. The title track became a hit. Rosie is the album cut that tends to be passed over in favor of the heavier emotional material. The song is playful and frank in a way that surprised listeners who knew his more somber records. David Lindley's lap steel guitar runs through the album with a looseness that fits the live recording format. Running on Empty reached number 3 on the Billboard 200, and the live concept gave every performance on it a spontaneity that studio albums rarely achieve.
Tonight, Rosie.
Number 9, Third Rate Romance by the Amazing Rhythm Aces.
She was staring at her coffee cup.
The Amazing Rhythm Aces were a Memphis-based band, and Third Rate Romance from 1975 reached number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song was written by lead vocalist Russell Smith, and it tells a simple story with a dry, knowing humor that wasn't common on rock radio at the time. The band drew simultaneously from country, blues, soul, and rock without worrying about which format they'd end up in. They won a Grammy for Best Vocal Group in 1976 for Amazing Grace, used to be her favorite song. Third Rate Romance is the track most people who know the band return to first. Spare production, a specific lyric, and a comfortable, well-worn quality that feels earned rather than manufactured. The band recorded for ABC Records and were part of a mid-decade moment when the lines between formats were genuinely blurry in the most productive way. Number 8, Couldn't I Just Tell You by Todd Rundgren. Todd Rundgren wrote Couldn't I Just Tell You in 1972 for his double album Something/Anything, and it stands as one of the finest power pop recordings of the decade. The song reached number 93 on the Billboard Hot 100, a chart position that tells you almost nothing about its quality. Rundgren played virtually every instrument on Something/Anything, recording most of it himself in the studio. He also produced Badfinger's Straight Up, Meatloaf's Bad Out of Hell in 1977, Grand Funk Railroad's We're an American Band, and the New York Dolls' debut, all within a few years of each other, alongside his own prolific solo output. The Something/Anything double album was released in February 1972 on Bearsville Records. His career is so sprawling that individual songs tend to get swallowed by the overall body of work. Couldn't I Just Tell You deserves to be heard on its own terms. It's 3 minutes of genuinely excellent pop rock songwriting that holds up without any help from nostalgia. Number 7, Jim Dandy by Black Oak, Arkansas. Black Oak, Arkansas came from the small town of Black Oak in northeastern Arkansas. They played a hard, raw southern boogie rock and had been performing together since the late 1960s, before their first studio album in 1971. Jim Dandy, a cover of Laverne Baker's original, first recorded in 1955, appeared on their 1973 studio album, High on the Hog, and charted at number 25 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming their biggest commercial moment. Frontman Jim Dandy Mangrum was a performer who commanded a room, and the live format suited the band far better than the studio. They were a significant act on the Southern rock circuit in the early part of the decade, and the energy in this recording captures exactly why. Number 6, Wishing Well by Free. Free's most famous moment is All Right Now, the 1970 single that reached number 2 in the UK and number 4 in the US. But Wishing Well, from their 1973 Heartbreaker album, the last studio album before the band officially dissolved, is the one that deserves a longer look. It reached number 7 in the UK. The Heartbreaker album itself peaked at number 47 in the US. Paul Rodgers' voice was, by this point, one of the most expressive instruments in rock music. The band had originally formed in London in 1968, when the members were between 16 and 18 years old. The Heartbreaker sessions happened under difficult circumstances. Guitarist Paul Kossoff's health problems severely limited his involvement, and the weight of that comes through in the music without making it inaccessible. Number 5, Green-Eyed Lady by Sugarloaf.
Green-eyed lady, lovely lady.
Sugarloaf was a Denver-based band led by Jerry Corbetta, and Green-Eyed Lady from 1970 reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. The song runs over 6 minutes, unusual for a single in 1970, and its extended organ solo became a fixture on FM radio. Corbetta's keyboard playing is the spine of the song, and the arrangement opens up gradually in a way that rewarded album format listening. The band returned with Don't Call Us, We'll Call You in 1975, reaching number 9, a satirical song about the music industry that demonstrated Corbetta still had a sharp sense of what a hook could do. But neither song gets the recognition that the chart positions suggest they deserve. Green-Eyed Lady was a landmark for what FM rock radio could do with a long-form track, and it showed that audiences would stay with a song that took its time getting somewhere.
I love nature, friend of me.
Number 4, Long Live Rock by The Who. The Who were never obscure, but Long Live Rock, recorded in 1972 and released in 1974 on Odds and Sods, a collection of unreleased material, never got the attention it warranted. Pete Townshend wrote it as a straightforward celebration of rock music as a cultural force. Keith Moon's drumming is characteristically overwhelming, and Roger Daltrey's vocal has a roughness that the more polished Who's Next tracks occasionally don't. Because Odds and Sods was a compilation of outtakes rather than a proper album, it never found the same place in the broader consciousness. Long Live Rock is one of the most underheard great songs in the entire Who catalog. Number 3, Flirtin' with Disaster by Molly Hatchet. Molly Hatchet came out of Jacksonville, Florida in 1975. part of the same Southern rock tradition as Lynyrd Skynyrd and the Allman Brothers, though considerably heavier. Flirtin' with Disaster, from their 1979 album of the same name, reached number 42 on the Billboard Hot 100. The chart position doesn't reflect how frequently it appeared on FM radio throughout 1979 and into the early 1980s. The band had 3 guitarists in the original lineup: Dave Hlubeck, Steve Holland, and Dwayne Rowland. The layered guitar sound gave their playing a density that set them apart from most contemporaries. The album cover, a Frank Frazetta fantasy painting, became one of the most recognizable images in rock record retail. Drummer B.B. Borden drove the rhythm section with a directness that suited the material, and the whole thing had a forward momentum that was hard to argue with once it started. Number 2, Highway Song by Blackfoot. Blackfoot were another Jacksonville, Florida band, connected to the same early Lynyrd Skynyrd world. Ricky Medlock and bassist Greg Walker had both briefly played with Skynyrd in 1971 and 1972 before Blackfoot took shape. Highway Song, from their 1979 album Strikes, is a driving rock track with a melodic quality that sits comfortably alongside the best of the era's Southern rock output. The album was produced by Al Nally and recorded at his studio in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Strikes reached number 42 on the Billboard 200. Blackfoot were a regular fixture on the hard rock touring circuit through the late 1970s and early 1980s, building a following through live performance rather than radio success. Vocalist and guitarist Ricky Medlock, who would later join a reconstituted Lynyrd Skynyrd in 1996, was the driving force behind the band's sound. The connection to the Jacksonville scene runs deep, and Highway Song stands as the clearest example of what the band could do when everything came together. Number 1, Foreplay/Long Time by Boston. Boston's debut album was released in August 1976 and became the best-selling debut album in American history at the time, eventually selling over 17 million copies in the United States. More Than a Feeling was the single. Peace of Mind got regular airplay. But Foreplay/Long Time, the 2-part track that opens side 2, is the deeper cut, the one that circulated among people who owned the album rather than just heard it on the radio. Tom Scholz recorded most of the debut in a basement studio he built himself in Massachusetts. He held an engineering degree from MIT and applied a meticulous attention to sound that gave the record an unusual sonic clarity. Foreplay is a brief instrumental that leads directly into Long Time, the two designed to be heard as one continuous experience, built for an album side rather than a radio format. The partnership with producer John Boylan helped bring the basement recordings into final shape, but the sonic architecture was Scholz's work from the beginning. After the album's release, Boston went from virtually unknown to arena headliners within months, one of the fastest transitions in rock history. But for anyone who first heard this music on vinyl, in the sequence Scholz intended, that album side is the part that stayed. Every single song on this list was sitting on a shelf somewhere, spinning on a turntable that belonged to someone who appreciated it while the rest of the world moved on. The 1970s had more rock music than any era could fully absorb, and the catalog is still full of things worth finding. Some of these tracks had brief moments in the chart spotlight. Others never got close to one. What they share is the kind of craftsmanship that only becomes more apparent with distance. If any of these pulled something back for you, a memory, a feeling, a summer you hadn't thought about in years, that's what this was for. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. There are more lists like this one on the way, and every one of them starts with putting the needle on the record.